Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest Jodel webinar. It's my absolute pleasure today to be working with an amazing panel, including Scott Cardwell, Bella, Rachel, and Claire. We're really delighted to be here with you today. Today's date is the 16th of May, 2022, and right now in the UK it's 7 o'clock in the morning, but we're all fine. We're all wide awake and we can't wait to get started. So this particular webinar is all around teaching languages in the metaverse with ImmerseMe. I'd love you to write in the chat where you're from, if you're from the UK, if you're from Australasia, if you're from the States, wherever it is that you are. We'd also love you to write down what languages you're teaching as well in the chat. And if you're teaching primary or secondary age students. If you are in different countries, feel free to say what time it is where you are right now as well. And just before we start, I'm going to share a very quick picture with you around a very cheesy picture of myself and Scott, just to show how long we've known each other. So let me show you this right now. Are we all ready? Here we go. Oh, there we are. Let me just minimize that. That's fantastic. So as you can see there, you should also be able to see that picture. This is myself and Scott in Nelson, New Zealand in 2016 at the NZALT conference. But we've actually known each other for well over 12 years, I think it is at least now, through Scott's connection with Education Perfect and Language Perfect as it was at the time. But Scott will be able to introduce himself in a moment, as well as introduce our amazing panel today. So we're really excited to be here with everybody. We are recording the session as normal, and as normal I will put it onto my YouTube channel after the session, so you'll all be able to watch it back as well. And we're actually having a US friendly screening as well a bit later on today, which Scott will be able to tell you all about. So without further ado, I'm going to hand back to Scott to introduce our session today about ImmerseMe.
Thank you so much, Joe. Oh my gosh, that photo was at the very first conference that I presented the idea of ImmerseMe, and I said to New Zealand language teachers, "What do you think of this concept? Should I do it?" And I had one lesson that I made in at a French cafe in Auckland, making a crepe, and they were like, "Whoa, is this possible?" And I was like, "I think so." So from that, I got a heap of confidence, and we took off on a flight around the world, on a trip around the world, making content for ImmerseMe, and that's kind of what I'm going to show you today. So it's taken a good 6.5 years, but very excited to have three amazing guests today. So in kind of chronological order of presentations, we've got Clair Atkins from King's InterHigh, which is the UK's largest online school. They've just been recently IB accredited. They have 4,000 students learning totally remotely, not a pandemic thing. This has been what they've been up to for what, 20 years, I think, or more. Claire, we'll find out from her more about that. They competed in our ImmerseMe Games last year, which was the second time we'd run a 1-week online virtual language competition, and they took it out. They won it, and it's happening again. It starts this Thursday. So they're the reigning champions of that competition. So I wish them all the best for this year coming up. Then we will have Rachel here. So Rachel is the Trust Director for Modern Foreign Languages at Nicholas Postgate. Oh my gosh, I keep forgetting the full name of this. Nicholas Postgate.
Catholic.
MPCAT. Catholic Academy Trust. That's it. Thank you, Rachel. They built a virtual reality room in the school called a VR Igloo, which was featured on the BBC recently. And I'm very excited to hear about how we supported her language students with that VR room. It's a very cool concept. We'll see more about that later. And then we also have Bella. Bella Tran and I have known each other for quite a few years now when she was living in Australia. She messaged me before she took off to the UK to go study at Oxford, wondering if she could do a study on ImmerseMe, virtual reality language learning at Oxford. I said, absolutely. And so here she is today to present her findings from that study, where she interviewed teachers from around the world about their perceptions of virtual reality technology for language learning. So we're incredibly lucky to have Bella here today to present her findings. And I understand that she's actually hopping on a plane this weekend back to the UK to graduate. So can't wait to see those graduation photos, Bella, once you pick up your master's from Oxford this or next week, is it?
Yes.
I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. So that's the quick introduction. My name is Scott Cardwell. I'm one of the co-founders of ImmerseMe, and I said for the last 6.5 years, we've been developing this virtual reality learning tool. So what is ImmerseMe and what's the metaverse? All right. So I'm just going to share my screen here. I'm actually just going to drop a couple of videos into the chat, which I think are quite good. That helps describe what is the metaverse, because it is a pretty weird concept. It literally means beyond the universe, or a virtual universe. Not to say that what we're doing is beyond the universe, but I mean, what we're trying to do is create language learning and make it 3D and put students into real life learning scenarios, whether that's through their desktop computer and they're interacting with a microphone and they're able to kind of click the screen and look around, or whether that's actually through some of the more immersive technology that's out these days, which is like the Oculus Quest or the Pico, and they can pop a headset on and be sort of transported into those locations. Another video I'll pop into the chat now is a discussion that I did on learning languages in the metaverse in what's called Altspace VR. And this is my little cool avatar on the side here. Clearly, I wish I had more here than I currently do. But those two videos help explain what the metaverse actually is. I won't go into any more detail than that, but it is a big topic. And I welcome you to explore that. And now I'm going to give you a really quick glimpse of ImmerseMe, so that when we go into the presentation, the panel, you'll have a little bit more understanding. So I know it's 7 a.m. in the UK right now. I think Indiana, someone said it's 2 in the morning. So I feel like we have to go straight in and just order ourselves a coffee. Okay, so I'm jumping into English. I'm going to go down to cafe. I'm going to go order myself a coffee. We'll do it in a couple of different languages just to give you an idea of what we're up to. But basically, it's a contextual situation. There is a script. There are variations on sentences, and students are expected to reply to questions. They can do so in a number of different learning modes, which try to scaffold the learning from support through to autonomy and a little bit of spontaneity. Then they can come up with their own responses based on some helpful prompts. But basically, I'll jump into this lesson. I'll go pronunciation mode. I'll set it to medium. I probably should set it to 100%, but I'm just going to set it to medium. And I'm going to jump in and click play. Now, feel free to ask questions to Joe as we go throughout this webinar, and he's going to summarize them at the end in our Q&A.
Hi, welcome to the Lido Cafe. What can I get for you?
All righty. Hello, I would like a coffee, please. Now, I'd always have to check my headphones because it doesn't work with my, hold on, just give me a sec.
When I have Zoom going, can everyone hear me still? Yeah. When I have Zoom going and my ImmerseMe, it doesn't connect as quickly, so.
Hi, welcome to the Lido Cafe. What can I get for you?
Hello, I would like a coffee, please.
Sure, what kind of coffee would you like?
Can I please get an espresso?
Would you like sugar in your coffee?
No, thanks.
Would you like to have it to sit in or to take away?
Definitely. To take away, please.
That'll be $2.50, please, and that will be with you shortly. Here's your takeaway coffee. Enjoy.
Smells delicious. Thank you. And so there we go. I've got myself through the first lesson, interacting with the native speaker. That's the speaking mode. There is some typing and spelling modes where you can type out the conversation as well. I won't go into too much detail of those just because of the time constraints. But what we can do is we can give students a translation and then an immersion mode, which will make probably a little bit more sense if I go to another language. Let me go to French now. And maybe since we've got our coffee, maybe we'll go grab ourselves a loaf of bread for breakfast. So let's go start lesson and click play.
Bonjour, bienvenue à la boulangerie. Que puis-je vous servir, s'il vous plaît?
Now, I'll just quickly point out a couple of things. So students, if they're not sure what the sentence means, they can click the translations button on the side here, and they will just switch this speech bubble into English just to show them a sort of a translation of the meaning of that sentence. And they can switch it back to French as well. They can listen to every sentence out loud.
Bonjour, je voudrais du pain s'il vous plaît.
They can also go into what's called slow mode, which just slows down the native speaker.
Bonjour, bienvenue à la boulangerie. Que puis-je vous servir, s'il vous plaît?
And if I was wearing my virtual reality headset right now, I could actually click this VR mode goggle icon here, And what would happen is the whole thing would kind of wrap around me and I would sort of be inside of this boulangerie. If I click and drag the screen on my computer, though, you can see that it's a 360-degree experience. And this is actually real video content. We've traveled around the world to make this rather than a computer-generated experience. So this is a real woman. Her name is Agnes, and she does work in this bakery. This is her boulangerie. So I'll reply to her now. Bonjour, je voudrais du pain, s'il vous plaît.
Quelle sorte de pain voulez-vous?
On slow mode. Est-ce que je peux avoir une baguette, s'il vous plaît?
Une baguette? Voilà, très bien. 1 euro, s'il vous plaît.
So, as you can see, she picked up the baguette. If I had asked for the pan de campagne or pan complet, she would have picked up that instead. So the scenarios kind of branch out into different directions. And that means that it allows the students to actually start the scenario again and work their way through and choose a different way to respond and practice their responses in multiple ways and get repetition from that as well, but in context and in the context of an actual scenario. Voilà. Bonne journée.
Merci beaucoup. Bonne journée. Au revoir.
So that's the kind of the student zone. We do cater to a whole lot of languages and a whole lot of units, and we kind of tailor the layout to match whatever textbooks you might be following. Say, for example, if I go into Spanish, these are all the languages we have at the moment. We are also building Arabic, Brazilian Portuguese, and Russian in time for the Northern Hemisphere full semester. And here's an example of customized layouts. So, for example, Entre Culturas 1. This is the layout match that we've done based on the units from that textbook. And each of them has a copy link button. And so we've grabbed the most relevant interactive lessons that we've created and dropped them into this section. So students can work their way down, having conversations that align with the units that you're teaching. And I'll quickly jump into what's called our teacher dashboard. So as a teacher, you get to monitor their progress. You can assign tasks. You can look at their points. So every time a student gets a sentence correct, they get a point for that learning mode. And so if they move on to other modes, then they'll get more points and the modes become progressively harder. So translation, immersion become more difficult. And then you can get a breakdown of how much students are actually using it to practice their listening and speaking. You can click on a student and you can get a summary of all the lessons that they've accessed, and you can filter by language, by mode, by level, by date, and click update, and you can export that into a spreadsheet and use that for grading. And then you can go and set up a task and say, I want you to focus on specific content. You could say revision, week 5, let's go over how to order food in a restaurant. You can write whatever message you want. I mentioned multiple pathways. You can choose whether you want students to go through all of them or just once through from start to finish. I'll set this for, let's say, Indonesian. I'll base it on the default layout. I'll set it to be running until Friday at, say, 6:30. Click next. I can select my students. I'll just give it to myself at the moment. Oops. And then I can select my scenario, restaurant. Click select all. And then finally, I can choose which modes I want my students to focus on. How many points that's going to require is up here. So that's about 300 sentences, which would take about 2.5 hours for them to go through every mode. So I'm just going to drop some modes off and then give them a target of, say, 25. And then I'm going to assign and email that to my students. And then that's going to give me a report. So if I go to my dashboard, I can see this task, revision week 5, how much has been completed. I've got a link to it. And then if I go into the student zone, it will be displayed in here. And these are the lessons that I've just selected. So the students, when they come in here, they'll see it straight away. You can also give them a link to that task, and you can drop that into your learning management system as well. So everything integrates. We're doing some like single sign-on integrations at the moment for various platforms and various learning management systems like Canvas and Moodle, as well as some others. So that's kind of enough of an introduction from me. I'm going to hand this back to Joe, and then we're going to probably hear from our first speaker.
Fantastic. Looks amazing, Scott. So can you just talk us through a little bit about the onboarding process for students? What does the teacher have to do? Are email addresses required of students? How does the teacher deal with that? How quick and easy is it to onboard students? And could you talk to us about GDPR compliancy, simply because I know that these are questions that always come up whenever we're doing webinars?
Yep, absolutely. So we are GDPR compliant. You can choose how much data you want to give us. Basically, if you give us names and emails, then it'll allow you to see names and assign tasks via email in the teacher dashboard. But we don't actually need those. We don't require those as such. It just helps you as a teacher to monitor and assign content. It can be completely anonymized if you like, and there can be fictional email addresses, and we can just create generic usernames. So if you want to be completely GDPR compliant, you can be. It's just up to you how much data you want to see and be able to export and analyze. It's really easy to get set up. I've just dropped a link into this. We say 30 days, but usually we give sort of that first, those first few months or half a year or more to let you try it out and use it with your students. I know it's coming up to the end of the year for a lot of the UK schools here. So if you wanted to get in touch with us, I'd be more than happy to arrange a trial at the start of next year. And you can give it a go with your students. If you're in the Southern Hemisphere, there's plenty of time. So just get in touch as well. Generally, we do a session like this where we teach your staff how to use it over maybe 15, 20 minutes, answer any questions, and then we're here to support you through the actual implementation of it. Clearly, you're going to need some pretty good technology. You're going to need ideally good internet. The device, it runs on any device, desktop, tablet, mobile, or VR headset. The newer the better, obviously, but it doesn't matter too much because it runs all in the browser. And ideally, the students can be wearing a microphone when they're actually doing it in class. That just helps isolate their voice and it makes it a lot more accurate. Otherwise, you can have them do the typing and spelling modes in class and then maybe practicing the speaking at home when it's nice and quiet. So hopefully that answers most of those questions, Joe.
That's excellent. And then just one final question before we move on to Claire. Can you give us an idea how many topics that you have already, different contexts on the ImmerseMe website?
Yeah, sure. We've got hundreds of scenarios per language, probably about 100 topics in there per language with situations to match. And they're all the way from beginner through to intermediate and advanced. We've just been recently building more sentence builder style lessons where students can kind of build their sentence from a drop-down list of vocabulary within the sentence, and then they can hear that whole sentence out loud and then record themselves actually saying it. So it's definitely a step above just giving them a printout with sort of sentence builder columns on it. They can actually then turn that sentence builder into a sentence, which is in reply to a question, and then form a conversation around that. And they can practice that as much as they need to with audio, being able to listen, and then being able to speak as well. So it's taking it from sort of, I guess, an offline activity into something they can do interactively online.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. So we've heard everyone about the introduction to ImmerseMe. We've heard from Scott. Now what we're going to do is hear from Claire, who's actually used the software in a real class, well, in an online classroom, should I say. Can't wait to hear more about your completely online school, Claire, as well. So I'm going to hand everyone over now to Claire, who's going to talk about how her students have actually been using ImmerseMe in a practical, real way. Over to you, Claire. And yeah, perfect.
Morning, guys. Can you see that okay on full screen?
Yeah, all good. All good.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Joe. So yeah, hi, my name is Clair Atkins. As Scott said, just hang on a minute. I know that I've got a bit of a problem here. Hold on. I'll work it out. So basically, I work at InterHigh, which is an independent British international school, and it gives students literally from all over the world, from year 3 all the way up to year 13, opportunity to access education delivered in a way that completely revolves around their lifestyle. So whether they're traveling from country to country, like Scott mentioned, or whether they're in a single base. It was founded in 2005, actually, so 17 years ago, not quite 20 years, but it's considered to be the original online school. And for anyone out there who's wondering how it works, then basically it offers students easy access to like amazing recorded lessons from anywhere in the world. So those lessons are designed by experienced UK trained subject specialists, as you'd expect in any school. And the lessons are optimized for our online environment to include maximum levels of interaction through things like quizzes, polls, classroom whiteboard tools. We've got over 4,000 students now, and it's growing every day. And graduates progress into a massive variety of careers and further studies at university, and we really are in every sense of the world a global learning community. So it's brilliant to be part of that and to feel like we're at the cutting edge of the best that technology can offer in terms of education anyway. So yeah, it's brilliant. So in 2020, we became the first UK school to get students, or give students a way of traveling the world, learning practical skills and being able to interact all during lockdown restrictions. So that was brilliant. So obviously I'm referring to ImmerseMe, which Scott has given a great introduction on. It literally allows students to step into that world that Scott has shown us, and they can take part in contextual conversations and scenarios. And basically you can see here there's somebody in a school. So this is a scenario where they'd go in and talk about future plans. And I couldn't resist putting up the scoreboard there for King's InterHigh to show how many points we've got. Just get that in at every point, Scott. This one is the French cafe. So here you can see they've gone in, they've asked for a coffee, and they've also got to add in the greetings like Scott said. So it is like as close to a real life scenario as you're going to get. And then there's the boulangerie that Scott showed you earlier. And you saw that if you ask for the right thing, then she'll go and get it off the shelf. So whether that's une baguette or un chausson de pomme, literally there are loads of different options. So we took part in the ImmerseMe games last year, and every student in the school took part. So at the time that was something like 3,600 students, and we got an overall score of 125,000 points. Not that I'm bragging again. So we were so excited to get the news from Scott that we'd actually won. And you can see on the image there that we had a virtual handover of the trophy from the McRob students. So this really demonstrates the power of technology, the fact that we had this virtual handover from Australia to the UK, and for a competition that literally had students participating from all over the globe. So it's just brilliant to be part of. So since November 2020, InterHigh, they've recorded something like 20,000 interactions, and that's just with A-level students, and we're hoping to have GCSE next year as well. So it really demonstrates like how it engages individuals and continues learning from the classroom. So it's brilliant. The biggest thing for me is that it helps reduce stress and improve confidence in speaking, which obviously as language teachers is what we're aiming to do. I'm sure everyone will agree that anxiety in general, never mind language anxiety, it's massive now, isn't it? Especially with young people losing contact with peers during COVID, and you know, there's quite a big thing about that at the moment. And so for us as MFL teachers, then I think the biggest challenge is to try and give that confidence back to students and to get rid of the fear or apprehension when using language. So this kind of, the ImmerseMe kind of gives them that third space, you know, that VR space, and it engages their senses. It's something they can relate to. It gets rid of that nervousness. So yeah, it's brilliant, really. It allows conversations to take place literally from the comfort of their own home, which kids really relate to. And the way the tasks are set up, you saw Scott give a little bit of a demonstration, but basically you can differentiate for every single student. So we can really focus on getting students to concentrate on the tasks that will maximize individual progress. So for us as teachers, it's a fabulous tool. So yeah, it's brilliant. You can probably gather already that I'm super competitive. So the trophy does look really good in our hands, and we'll be trying everything possible to get it back next year. So yeah, bring it on, guys. Thanks. I'm going to hand back to you, Joe.
Superb. Thank you so much. That's a really lovely overview, and we've got a taster there of how the students are reacting to using ImmerseMe. Can you give us a bit more of an insight on sort of like individual quotes, if you like, or bits of feedback that they've said? I mean, would you say that the main reason they like is because they do feel as if they're actually going to the foreign country and practice the language in situ, as it were? Would you say that's the main takeaway, or how are the students, what sort of natural things have they said about using the software?
I think it's the fact that although they're put on the spot, it's done in a safe way. So it's not like a teacher or a peer putting them on the spot in a breakout room, for example. They get a chance to think. Normally it's linked to whatever we've done in the class. So it's vocab that's recently been used. But yeah, when they go in there, because there's those multiple choices of how you set up the task. So you can set it up to have options down at the bottom. You can set it up to have, like Scott showed, the English translations at the top. So they really can choose the way that's most comfortable for them. And I think that makes a big difference, that the fact that they've got a little bit of control over it.
Fantastic. And can I just ask as well, in relation to your schemes of learning, how have you sort of mapped out the topics in ImmerseMe with that?
So obviously we're an interactive school and there's so much going on. We've got an amazing learning development team who are also always, developing things for us to use. So what we do is we've got a massive map of every single subject from year 3 all the way up to 13. And then every single week we map out all the different VR stuff, the things from the learning development program, the ImmerseMe, and obviously we cross-reference that with topics. So every week we can be setting and saying to kids, right, refer to this online or refer to that. So yeah, it's all kind of mapped in, and yeah, it's brilliant.
That sounds amazing. Sounds really fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for your input. And obviously we'll ask you to come back a bit later on when we do the more general Q&A. This is going really well so far. Lovely. So now we're going to go to Rachel. But before I introduce Rachel, I think, Scott, we've got a little video clip from the BBC we're going to run first. Is that right? Yeah. So I watched this live. I didn't realize it was going to be happening, but I remember watching it live about Rachel's school in Teesside, and we're going to watch it now. And then Rachel will then talk about how she's been using ImmerseMe in her context. Over to you, Scott.
It's a new, exciting way of bringing lessons to life. That's according to a Teesside school leading the way with a 360-degree virtual reality suite for its lessons, known as the Igloo. Stuart Wincup reports from Middlesbrough.
It grabs the attention. Dramatic, loud, the action is all around. Teachers hope the virtual reality suite will make lessons more accessible, more memorable.
It's really exciting. We're the first school in the country to have an Igloo, and ultimately our pupils will make more progress. They can't remember every single English lesson they were in or every single maths lesson or French lesson, but they will remember the time when they're in the VR suite at St Peter's.
Schools have been using virtual reality in classrooms for years. But there's no need for headsets here.
Looking around, really, it's just phenomenal. Just everything about this room is just amazing.
It's a really good technology that'll really help us develop the key skills we need that'll help put us ahead in our future careers.
When I came in, it looked amazing the way the room's all laid out. It's like spread across all walls. It gives you a proper feeling of what it's actually going to be like.
The suite was designed by a New Zealand company run by Scott.
It's moving beyond the 4 walls of the classroom into real life scenarios, and I guess it's sort of somewhat like the magic school bus, really. Getting taken outside of what you're used to and what you're familiar with.
The screens can also be used to provide work experience without children ever having to leave the school.
We took them into theatre, we took them onto an oil rig, we take them into a courtroom. They need to feel it, see it, touch it for them to really understand if that's a career that's right for them.
Stuart Wincup, BBC Look North, South Bank.
Wow, amazing. So let's hear some more about the Igloo. Rachel, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Happy to meet everybody. Nice to meet everybody today. Can you hear me okay, Joe? Excellent. I'm just going to go and see if I can share this. Okay. I'm not quite sure if it's going to share my PowerPoint this morning. So I may have to do without it, but that's okay. I'll just talk. That's fine. Scott, I think you've got access to it. So if you get the chance to just pop that presentation on while I'm talking, that'd be fantastic. So yeah, morning, very, very early morning to everybody. So it's really early here in the UK, but we've made it. My name's Rachel Heer. I'm Trust Director of MFL here at Nicholas Postgate Catholic Academy Trust. It's a large family of 27 schools in the northeast of England, and it serves a lot of areas in Stockton-on-Tees and Middlesbrough. So fantastic, thank you, Scott. So last year, NPCAT invested a huge amount of money in a virtual reality suite called an Igloo at one of its secondary schools, St Peter's Catholic College in South Bank, Middlesbrough. And the purpose of this Igloo was to help pupils engage with language learning beyond the traditional classroom. As soon as the igloo was built, it was kind of an up for grabs. Who wants to get involved? Who wants to get in there first? And being an MFL teacher, I immediately saw this as a fantastic opportunity to help bring my curriculum subject to life. As in many parts of the Northeast, studying foreign languages here has often been challenging, partly due to pupils' lack of awareness, I think, of the benefits and relevance of the subject to their lives and future careers, but also due to the difficulties of trying to learn in a classroom where there's only one French speaker, but many pupils who all learn at different speeds. So seeing what the room had to offer, I felt the igloo could transport the pupils out of their immediate surroundings and give them the impression of actually being in a French-speaking country. And this was something we really, really needed. The breakout room, which is attached to it, so it's a small room with lots of computers and headsets. I saw that as being the equivalent of the modern equivalent of when I first learned languages. We sat there kind of in a room with the audio visual, and we could all work at our own speed. And that was fantastic. And I think this for me was kind of a version of that, but with the added advantage that they could interact with the screen. And obviously it's a bit more, it feels to them a bit more like real time. They get those responses straight back. So with this in mind, I then started to search around for some kind of interactive language learning that we could use in the igloo. And I came across ImmerseMe. And following discussions with Scott, the CEO, we came up with a plan for how we could use Scott's website to create this virtual experience for pupils. So we could actually take them to a French-speaking country and we could get them to feel like they were interacting in French. First aim was to create the immersive experience. So for this, as you can see, you saw from the video there, we've got the igloo and the 360 immersion. So we got a video up of Paris and we projected that onto the 4 walls of the igloo. And the pupils got a real sensation of being immersed in the language, immersed in the landscape of the capital city as the video played. We got them sitting on the floor, so they, you know, dimmed the lights, and it created a really great atmosphere. They were, you know, you could tell from the look on the faces as they were looking around from wall to wall that they were really immersed. We then changed the projection on the wall to the 4 French shop scenes, which we accessed through the immersive language learning website. And I talked the pupils through, you can see there in the bottom left, I taught them through each shop in turn, demonstrating how they could hear the shopkeeper speak and then click to record their voice. And I used a handheld mic for that to get the pupils to come up and speak into French. So we were kind of in it together at that point. We'd gone from the 360 experience, right, we're in Paris, now let's literally go into one of the shops. Went to the breakout room next, so you can see there on the bottom right, where they're there at their own individual Chromebook with headset. They logged on and worked through then the various different scenarios at their own speed. One of the benefits of the website is that the pupils, I think as Claire mentioned, they can change the speed of the speaker's voice. They can replay the speaker as many times as they want, and then they can re-record themselves, which is great because they're then working at their own speed. You know, that they're not being held up by somebody else's speed. They're not waiting for the teacher to move on. So it's really tailored to the pupil. So having worked with Scott in advance of the session, the pupils worked through material that was directly related to the curriculum topic that we were studying. And to increase their engagement even further, we added an element of competition. So pupils earned points as they move through each online interaction. And the feedback from the pupils was extremely positive. You know, you could overhear them saying, "Oh, this is fantastic. I love this website." We knew that we got them. We captured their interest. So as you can see, this use of a virtual reality room, along with immersive language learning teaching, such as using ImmerseMe, it's been championed in the BBC Look North feature. We're really excited to have it. We're the first school in the UK to have a VR suite. They're normally more in higher educational institutions. So we're really excited to be the first secondary school to have one. And we're really excited to be forerunners of the use of technology in supporting and promoting the development of language learning. And that's it.
Lovely, fantastic. You've really given us a really nice snapshot there of how the igloo works. I love that word. It's fantastic. Can you sort of, for those teachers listening to this right now, can you give us an idea on how you would actually sort of plan a set of lessons using the igloo? So, for example, how much time would you spend in the igloo? How much time would then the students spend independently working on the task afterwards? Just so in a very practical way, can you give us an idea of how you would plan in a sequence of lessons around the igloo?
Absolutely. I think we thought it was really important to use that 360 igloo to create the immersive experience first of all, and you have that together. We as human beings, we interact together all the time, we're in things together. We wanted that feeling, so I think we took at least sort of 15-20 minutes in that room, making sure we're interacting with the walls, learning, teaching them how to actually use the facility, ready for when they go to do things individually on their own Chromebook. And then we had everything mapped out in the background, obviously with the help of Scott, where we had the materials we were using, the textbooks, all mapped to fit what they were going to go on to. So we had a support sheet for them as well to help them navigate through a bit of scaffolding, for sort of weaker learners as well. And then we went round and facilitated them getting onto the right bit, the right unit, to support their learning and what we were doing in the classroom generally.
Fantastic. Now, on the BBC clip, we heard the students saying, "This is amazing. This is fantastic." Can you give us a deeper insight into how they really, felt about the experience? If they felt that it really enhanced their language learning, was it just like the wow factor of going in there and having that immersive experience, or have you found that motivation has waned over time, or how? I just like to get more of a sense of how the students really feel about it, because it's when you have like a 2-minute clip on the BBC, it's lovely to hear the children saying it's fantastic, but what do they really think about that experience?
Yeah, I think they realised very quickly that they could gain much more from actually interacting, and they could feel their language progressing. So every time we've gone back into the room to use it since, they can see where they've made gains from the previous session and move on a little bit quicker because they've got that instant feedback, which you're obviously going to get because you're able to stop, pause, get the response from the shop owner and so on. So yeah, I think you've got to use it again and again and again. Absolutely, you don't want it as a one-off. But I think we've already noticed a difference because they are engaging more. They are more confident, like Claire was saying, about speaking out loud. So it's not just a gimmick factor. It's really bringing them on with their linguistic progression.
Yeah, and of course that's what it's all about. Yeah, so presumably, are they constantly asking you, "Can we go to the igloo, miss?"
Yes, absolutely. And classes who we haven't quite managed to get in there yet are asking, why haven't we been in yet? Yeah. When's it our turn? We're like, well, all in good time.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you so much. We had a question from Fernando about the igloo. Is it a touch screen interaction? Can you touch the screen or not?
Unfortunately, it's not. I think that would cost probably some millions more, maybe in the future. But there are ways around that, and we did find a way around that in order to connect it, to get that mic connection. We've kind of got like a hidden laptop in a side room on the back, which will allow that kind of interactivity. So a lot of it is to do with that 360 projection, but you can get around it. There are ways to do that without spending the money.
Fantastic. And do you ever find some of the students feel a sense of sort of sensory overload being in that 360 environment at all?
No, not really. We haven't had any feedback like that. I think, if anything, no. If you think about real life, do we have sensory overload when we've got 360 around us all the time and we don't have sensory overload? I think it literally transports them there, and it's what we desperately need as language learners.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you so much, Rachel. I think that's given us real practical insight into the realities of using such a fantastic resource like the igloo. That's really fascinating. Thank you so much. So we're now going to hear from, thank you so much. We're now going to hear from Bella. Now Bella has done some research, a master's thesis around the use of virtual reality. We're going to hear from Bella for about 10 minutes or so. I'm really particularly fascinated in this aspect of the panel discussion because of the fact that we're going to have a sort of like an evidence-based approach to looking at how virtual reality can assist with foreign language learning. So I would welcome everyone's questions in the chat as well, because I know there's a certainly in the UK anyway, there's a real appetite and desire for research behind why such and such practice in the classroom works or doesn't work. And so this particular section of the panel, I'm sure, will be absolutely fascinating. So I bigged you up now, Bella. Over to you to hear about why VR can support the learning of foreign languages from an evidence-based point of view. Over to you, Bella.
Thank you, Joe. Can you see the screen?
Yep, we can. All good.
Amazing. So hello, everyone. My name is Bella Tran, and as Joe introduced, I finished my master's degree at Oxford University, and my research topic is about the use of virtual reality technology in foreign language education from teachers' perspectives. So the main purpose of the study was to find out what teachers who are the direct users of the VR technology in classroom settings and how they feel about their experiences. They share about the benefits, the drawbacks, and all the challenges that they met during while using the technology in classroom settings. And we're comparing their experiences with those who haven't used the VR yet and are only introduced to the technology, and see if there are differences in their perceptions and see how we can address them for the best sort of experiences in the future. Right, so firstly, we talk about what is VR technology. So basically, VR technology is defined as a software where users can interact with a virtual space that may include digital avatars, tasks, and or decision making. This is pretty I guess, like an overall definition. We can go more into details in the discussions, what levels of immersions can also help define the types of VR technologies as well. So the reasons why I chose ImmerseMe as a case study for my study, there are a number of reasons. So firstly, ImmerseMe provide a renowned learning program that offers student engagement with native speakers in real life scenarios. As you was seen earlier, there are 4 scaffolded modes of learning, and we try to explore the effects of all these modes of learning on students' sort of learning experiences. So pronunciations, writing, translations, and immersion. The speech recognition using Google API also sort of contribute to the students' learning experiences as well. So they can sort of improve their pronunciations. One of the very sort of big areas of learning that especially English learners have troubles with. Then 9 supported languages, and yeah, there are 3 more coming soon. So wide variety of languages to try out. Currently, there are 100,000 students have been registered. So and also 1,600 teachers as well. So apparently, the sample size is very sufficient for large-scale research. Right, so I go straight, because of the time restraint, I go straight into the research questions and so like brief about the methods I conducted the research. So the first research questions, I'm trying to get the teachers' perceptions of using ImmerseMe in language teaching. In particular, what areas of learning are supported the most by this VR tool, ImmerseMe? What are the general benefits and drawbacks of using ImmerseMe and VR technology in language education? What are the main challenges that teachers face during their teaching, and what are the factors relating to the VR implementations for language education? The research method was sequential explanatory. So I conducted a quantitative research where I sent out 500 questionnaires to 500 teachers to collect the data. And then a qualitative research was conducted where I invited the teachers to sort of take part in a focus group discussion to further explain their responses and explain why they think what they said earlier. The second questions, I looked at whether the current users and non-users have different opinions or not in terms of these aspects. So I want to see if, comparing their perceptions in terms of areas of learning supported by VR, the benefits and drawbacks, whether they really have different opinions after using the technology, the implementation challenges, and also the enabling factors as well. So to do this, this research questions, I use statistical analysis to find out the statistical differences. So now let's look at the research findings. Most exciting part. But beforehand, we talk about the sample size of the research, and there's some sort of details on these as well that might affect the validity of the study. So we have about 100 eligible participants aged from 21 to 80. 83% were female, had about 14 years of average teaching experiences, and 50% are current users, 50 are not users of ImmerseMe, and 83% of the teachers teaching secondary levels, another 17% were teaching higher education. The participants for the research reside in various parts of the world, where 41% from Australia, 32% from Vietnam, 7% from New Zealand, 10% from the United States, 1% from each of these following countries: Ecuador, Iceland, Italy, Japan, Mexico, South Korea, Macedonia, and Turkey. So we can see that there's a variety of teachers coming from all over the world. The 17 teachers who joined in the follow-up focus group discussions, 3 to 5 participants. So basically the sample size is proportional to the larger sample size that I said earlier in terms of gender, years of teaching experiences, and teaching levels. However, in terms of levels of technology usage and the countries of residence, there's a bit of differences here, where the Vietnamese participants were underrepresented in the qualitative sample size. 47% of the users and the teachers here used computer-based programs for teaching on a daily basis. So we can sort of, to a certain extent, understand that these teachers who took part in this study were quite sort of technology-driven and sort of have are quite keen on using some technology in their teaching. Right, so the results, what we found out is that in terms of areas of learning that supported by VR, teachers believe that the levels of ImmerseMe benefits of speaking equal to listening, better than vocabulary usage, equal to self-correcting grammars and lexicon, and better than the writing performance. Or in other words, the use of ImmerseMe and VR technology benefits speaking and listening the most, and its impact on writing performance was not as clear. In particular, the qualitative data also sort of just shown the kind of similar results as well, where all the teachers believe that speaking was rated as the areas of learning benefited most from VR, especially at the beginner levels. So one of the teachers commented that the students may lose their initial inhibitions and speak up while interacting with VR programs compared to real humans from scratch. So a little bit of discussions around this finding. So speaking and listening skills are apparently benefited the most from the use of VR. This is because, as Claire said earlier, so VR technology does help students lose their initial inhibitions and shyness. So it allows them to sort of practice the language production for social use, so put them into an immersive environment where they can be comfortable talking to like a virtual person, native speaker, who can sort of develop the conversations with them as things go. And it really benefits the beginner levels who kind of often found struggle to initiate social conversations because of the language confidence. The fact that via ImmerseMe, the student can listen to and repeat sounds produced by native speakers. We also have the slow mode as well, which really helps the student to improve their pronunciations. And all of these findings kind of consistent with previous studies where other authors also showed that speaking and listening skill are most benefited from the use of VR in language education. The benefits in vocabulary and grammar development is also found clear. This is also consistent with previous studies. However, the benefits on students' writing and reading skill are not as clear, and therefore the study shows that longitudinal studies should be conducted to examine whether the use of VR also benefits student writing and reading comprehension as well in the long run. So in terms of benefits of the VR technology and especially ImmerseMe in language education, so both quantitative and qualitative data shows that the teachers believe that ImmerseMe really benefits student learning experiences via the elements of novelty, authenticity, where the student can really immerse into real life scenarios and have conversations with native speakers of the target language, really increase and diversify their learning experiences. In terms of teaching and learning approaches, so teachers believe that using ImmerseMe brings like a more effective way to teach and learn. Particularly, it facilitates constructivist and active learning. So both students and teachers are sort of like have active roles in their classrooms. So students can sort of create the conversations on their own. There's no sort of like format, as in like no fixed conversation for them to learn by heart. So it's very active learning. It also facilitates task-based, contextualized learning as well. So they can immerse into different contexts and develop conversations on their own. It facilitates student-centered modes of instructions. So it's all about the student practice. The role of teachers in sort of like a VR-driven classroom would be to facilitate their learning by instructing them how to use the technology effectively rather than showing them the knowledge. The students themselves will build and construct the knowledge by themselves. And apparently it really increases students' language confidence as well. So one of the teachers shared that the students like the immersive part the most because a lot of my students have never been abroad or have never left the state of Virginia or maybe even the Hampton Roads area. So it was their first time really seeing a grocery store in France, greeting someone in an informal or formal way. I think overall it was a really positive experience. So as Claire and Rachel said earlier, it really bringing about sort of like new and authentic experiences for the student to sort of open their ways of seeing the world and really bringing more like a cultural aspect into language learning. So in terms of the drawbacks of VR technology, some of the teachers agree that the lesson, because the VR technology is pretty new state-of-the-art technology, and therefore the teachers would have to redesign the lesson or sort of like make sure that the lessons is flexible enough for them to sort of try out different exercises using VR technology, and therefore the redesign process can be time-consuming. Also, because involving a new technology factors into classroom settings might require extra time allocation for technology setup or to solve any technical problems, and therefore it might lead to the fact that there's like a practice time and content teaching. But these sort of drawbacks, I guess, is short term, and once we have more clear ideas of how to use the technology effectively in classrooms, and these can be apparently minimized to sort of optimize the student experience. From the qualitative data, the teacher shows that the use of VR unfortunately cannot entirely replace peer-to-peer interactions, and therefore the teacher suggests that VR technology and ImmerseMe is most effective when used to sort of diversify the learning resources, diversify the students' learning experiences, and as a supplementary resource for individual practice. So lastly, in terms of implementation challenges, so what sort of challenges that the teachers met while using ImmerseMe or VR technology in teaching? So the quantitative data shows that At some schools, the lack of access to the required VR facilities, including the 3D headsets, and the teacher training were also some of the challenges that they met. So one of the teachers said that most of my staff has been through the experiences of using a trial and error in the classrooms. So we all understand that when we bring in such a new technology into the classroom, then teacher training can also be a big problem that we have to face. So how to make sure that the teachers have a clear ideas of what to use the technology for, how to use it effectively. It will require an amount of time for them to sort of get used to the technology. The qualitative data also shows that the functionality of the voice recognition features it can be a problem especially when the class size is pretty big, and therefore there will be class noise, and therefore some students voice might not be recognized correctly, and that's one of the things that we can look at for future research. So how can we sort of maximize the student experiences and using the voice recognition features, but still make sure that there's no sort of technical glitches while using these technology. So in conclusion, some of the factors that are really sort of decisive when that sort of decide the effectiveness of using a VR technology would be some of these below. So the functioning facilities, the computers and hardware are apparently very important. Good internet connections is very important as well. So when the students are learning and the internet connection dropped, it really affects their experience as well. The student contribution to the classroom, so whether they engage with the lessons, whether they sort of have like learning autonomy to self-learn effectively, and whether they concentrate on the lessons as well. So one of the teachers shared with us that when the students were in the classrooms, and he or she sort of like had a conversation with the native speaker on the screen, and then the conversation could not move on because the student might not pronounce the word correctly, and that really creates some sort of frustrations, and therefore the student really need to concentrate to practice, to do drills and exercises before practice with VR technology to make sure that they have best sort of experiences with the technology. Last factor would be curriculum-related factors. So, as I said, the student needs a sufficient knowledge of learning content to be able to process with the technology as well. Adaptive curriculum, so we spend some extra time allocations for any arising technology problems. Flexible teaching segments, so one of the teachers shared that be mindful of the teaching segments to make the lessons more interesting and more engaging. So we're not sort of having like one repetitive sort of lesson planning. Sometimes we have to teach in reverse with spelling mode first, and then go back to pronunciation, go back to writing, and then conversations or translation. So because we have 4 modes of learning, so the diversifying these modes of learning also help to sort of make the lessons more engaging and more interesting. In terms of pedagogical implications, so what we get from these findings is that apparently speaking and listening, as I said, are 2 learning areas that benefit most from the use of VR, and therefore prospective teachers really should consider setting up initial VR practice of speaking and listening skills before exploring how VR might benefit other skill sets. So really make use of its benefits first, and then we'll see how VR might fit into sort of improving reading and writing skills. The VR integrated materials and exercises such as pronunciation practice are very beneficial for individual practice, and therefore these are very ideal for self-practice activities in home settings, especially in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Right. So what can we do from this? So it's advised that schools, teachers, and program organizers should collaborate together to optimize the VR teaching and learning experiences. So from school perspective, what can we do? So the school can provide teachers and students with access to required hardware and software facilities and a stable internet connections, very important. The school can also provide digital skills training and VR programs specific training as well, to make sure that the teachers have a clear understanding of how to use the technology effectively. From teachers' perspective, what can we do? So we can discuss, collaborate to redesign the curriculum together, carry out the lesson planning and enrich teaching resources. We share the resources with our network and prepare backup plans. Make sure that we always have backup plans for any sort of rising technology problems. We can show an adaptive mindset when integrating VR technology into our curriculum as well. And we can carefully build flexible teaching sequence to sort of diversify the lesson plan. For the second question, whether the current users and non-users have different perceptions. The findings shows that there is no differences in the perceptions of current users and non-users. I really wonder why. I really thought, and one of the hypotheses of the studies is that the current users and non-users probably have very different sort of perceptions on these aspects. However, the finding is not as I expected. So some of the reasons that might explain this circumstance is that the current state did not really differentiate users based on categories, non-users, new users, long-term users, and therefore it might affect how we categorize the two groups. There's a possibility that most current users in this study were still new to the technology, and therefore their mindset were not substantially different from those non-users. So there can be other reasons explaining for this as well. So really more research can be done to sort of really figuring out what the difference is between the current users and non-users in terms of different aspects of using VR in language classroom settings. And that will be the end of the research. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm looking forward for any questions on the research. Thank you.
Wow, Bella, that was incredible. A number of people have written some lovely comments in the chat about the research. They've asked whether they could have a copy of the research. Scott has very kindly put a link in the chat, and I'm sure that when we publish the recording onto YouTube, we can include a link to the research as well, because there was a lot of information there, and I'm sure that people would like to have a proper look at it and look exactly what you've come up with your findings. But that was really, really fascinating. Scott has also very kindly, you're absolutely welcome. Scott has also very kindly put a quote in the chat as well from your thesis. I'm just going to read it out now, if that's okay, and just get your reflections on it. So the quote is as follows: in terms of VR benefits, the use of VR in language classrooms appears to benefit contextualized learning, in which the VR application, e.g. ImmerseMe in this context, provides students with experiences of the authentic culture of the target language, assisting them to create meaning from the knowledge they are gaining. VR is also believed by teachers to allow the practice of constructivist, it's difficult to say at 8 o'clock in the morning, constructive pedagogy and student-centered approaches, both of which benefit students in the long term. Could you just give us a little snapshot into your thoughts behind that quote that you wrote?
Well, yes. So, yes, I think this is quite a clear statement on the benefits of VR. So I think the purpose of having VR, using VR technology in language learning, is that we're building sort of like a more authentic experiences for the students, so that they don't have to really travel to a country in order to learn about the culture, having sort of immersive experiences with language and culture of the target language as well. Because I think that culture is such a big part of learning a language. Traditional ways of learning, right? We look at exercises, we do all of these, we use memories, we use the senses of learning to learn languages. But learning languages is so different from learning other kinds of knowledge. By because of the fact that language is attached to culture, to tradition, to the countries. So therefore, I think that the purpose of using VR is to bringing all of these into like a multimodal environment where the students can really have sort of, they can look, they can see, they can touch, they can sort of develop full sense of immersions when they're learning a language. And I think it's a really nice idea and really important for the students to be able to have this environment to excel their learning.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Bella. Really, really grateful to you for that research. That's really fascinating and lots of food for thought, I think, for moving forward. I'm sure that there'll be lots of people who want to download the research and look in more detail on your findings. So officially, we were supposed to run for about an hour, but we're going to carry on for another 15 minutes or so. If you have any further questions, then please put them in the chat. I'm now going to put a question to, based on what we've just seen, to Rachel around this sort of immersive nature of using VR, using ImmerseMe. Particularly, I'm thinking for, say, exam classes. What would you say are the benefits of ImmerseMe and say the Igloo for students doing, in a UK context, GCSE or A-level?
Absolutely. I think one of the problems that we have is getting them to connect and getting to have enough situations where they can practice their language. You know, you set up all of these sort of scenarios, but I think it's the lack of a genuine information gap that can be quite problematic, particularly as they go up through the school. They know they're in a classroom just like any other, and despite being taught, say, how to buy a train ticket, they know there's actually not a real need to buy a train ticket. But by using platforms like this, they can get a sense of actually being there, and in doing so have a more real experience, and that's kind of what we're after.
Definitely, and then they can hang that language on remembering the context that they remembered when they produced that language. I'm sure we can all think of situations whereby we'll never forget a particular word or a particular sentence because of the fact we used it in a very memorable context. And I'm sure that this is exactly what's happening in ImmerseMe in what we're talking about here. I don't know if you wanted to reply to that, Rachel.
Yeah, they do, absolutely. They do remember those scenarios, and that's you know how we do have a lot of our language learning based on memories. We can all sort of connect to parts of our learning and put a specific memory with that. And I think if it's always the same, and if it's always in the classroom and it's always the textbook, you know, you haven't got that range to help with your you know, the schemata in your head. Whereas if you actually connect to something that's very different and that's real in a different sense, that definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, I agree. Lovely. Claire, on a similar note, can you talk us a little bit more about how you feel that ImmerseMe brings language learning to life in an online teaching scenario?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you've seen from the examples, it literally puts students in a real situation. So they can look around using the VR technology. They can imagine that, you know, they're in that place talking to a real person. And I think most students relate to this way of learning because it's similar to computer games that I see my niece and nephew playing, where there's more and more interaction that changes the way the game moves forwards, which is how this works, you know. So in this case, you know, what they say to the avatar in the cafe, for example, affects what's said back, and it's as close to real life as you're going to get. And yeah, I think the kids really do relate to that.
Lovely. Scott, I'd like to bring you in now. Can you give us a snapshot on what you think the future of VR in a language learning context is going to be?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Far out. This has been an awesome discussion. It's really got me thinking actually a little bit more about what we are doing and whether we're actually making an impact. And I guess, you know, it's a tool. I mean, it's a tool just like anything else. You know, a builder would use many tools to build a house. I think language teachers need tools to help inspire their students, and this is just one of those that hopefully can provide some real context. You know, we want to provide students with more agency over their learning. So as I mentioned, you know, we're looking at creating kind of lessons where they can kind of manipulate their response and they can kind of learn the grammar rules as well by doing that, and they can, you know, apply or modify it, personalize their responses. I mean, I don't think it's going to replace, it certainly doesn't replace teachers or anything like that. I think it helps to actually, another analogy I use is you know, music. So, your favorite band, you know, you get really excited about going and seeing your favorite band live. And so what do you do when you know, in the lead up to a concert, you might go and play their music on repeat for like a week before you go, so that when you're at the conference, you can sing along, you know what's coming up. And I think that it's the same for languages. You know, we want to just familiarize students with language so that when they get to using it, it's familiar. And they've got confidence, and they can respond more fluently in the context of that scenario. And I guess fluency is an interesting question. I mean, it gets used a lot, and I think it gets, the perception of it is that you're able to fluently engage in any topic about in the target language, but it's so contextual. You know, I'm not fluent in a room of NASA rocket scientists talking about what they're going to do with this rocket. I wouldn't have the language, I wouldn't have the understanding of the concepts to talk about that, even though it was in my base language, which might be English, for example. So fluency is so contextual, and I think the more we can teach students that, you know, it's okay just to learn enough to get through certain situations that they will encounter in the real world, and help build their confidence to kind of thrive as a global citizen, I think is exciting. And I think we should also think about trying to give students a range of languages, because the world is becoming so multicultural. If they can actually interact in a very basic way with lots of people and lots of different languages, rather than say one in particular, you know, then that's really powerful, especially if those are community languages that they're interacting with people in their own classrooms, for example, and able to greet their friends in their language. You know, that would help build relationships and foster community. So, I mean, I have lots of thoughts about this, and I'm not necessarily qualified to talk about it, but I can sort of see how technology can play a little part in that, and help inspire students to want to learn lots of languages and learn enough to be confident with that.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you just said. That's fantastic, lovely. I'm now going to do a question from the audience, from Anthony, who's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Anthony, for coming along and for your question. So Anthony's asked, in a class, we all know that a class should be student-centered. How can we avoid the class from being VR-centered, a class where this technology speaks more than the student? Great question. So I'm going to open it up to anyone on the panel who'd like to start off. First, I could obviously ask people if no one volunteers as in a real classroom, but if okay, Claire'd like to talk to this one. So over to you, Claire, to say how can we make sure that the learning is student-centered and not centered on the technology, which is one of the key traps, I think, when we're ever talking about technology and languages. Okay, Claire, over to you.
Yeah, totally true. Great question, Anthony. I think it goes back to what we said right at the beginning, and Scott showing how you set up the tasks on ImmerseMe. It's really made so it's not VR centered. It's really made and tailored around the student, because when you set up the activities, you literally can click, like Scott showed, on individual students. So you can work at the level they're working at. You can give them a skill they need to work at. I would say it's completely student centered. You know, when I started working with this last year, I was really surprised to find that. And so Scott's developed actually a product that answers that perfectly. You know, brilliant, Scott.
Fantastic. Rachel, any thoughts on that yourself?
No, I would agree. One of the things that we've really struggled with is getting pupils to be able to work at their own level, at their own skill base, and getting it tailored for them when you've got that kind of mix of abilities in the classroom, and to be able to kind of almost like unplug them from you and let them just get on at their own speed is just fantastic. And they can make quicker progress, I think, you know, when they're using that, because they're in contact with the language more than they would be, I think, in a normal classroom scenario where they might do a bit of speaking, you know, on a couple of occasions, 2 or 3 times a week. This way, you know, they can carry on at home as well. It can really increase their progress and their linguistic progression.
Lovely. Fantastic. And Bella, based on the research, would you say that there is definitely a risk of too much of a focus on the technology and not on the student-centeredness? You're muted, Bella.
Thank you, Joy, and thank you, Fernando, for the questions. Well, I think so. There are 2 points I want to make. So, firstly, I think whether it's student center or teacher center or technology center doesn't just rely on the amount of who speaks more. So, if in the classroom the teachers speak more, doesn't really mean that it's really teacher center. It depends on a lot of factors. So it's student center when all of the activity in the classroom sort of point to what the student experiences. So the purpose using VR technology per se, when sort of, as I say in the research, is that it aims to diversify the student learning experiences, and not just with the teacher per se, but with also some sort of native speakers, a wide range of native speakers from the screen. So it's all adding up to their experiences. So even when they use the technology and they have different conversation with different native speakers, they can improve their pronunciation, they can improve their confidence, and I think it's all student center. It doesn't, it doesn't just rely on the amounts of who, sort of like the sort of like say who's speaking more in the classrooms. So that's what I think. So as it's in the research, so I agree that technology should be used to sort of diversify the student learning experiences rather than sort of replacing teachers or facilitators in the classrooms. Yeah.
Amazing. And that's a really lovely point, I think, to sort of finish our discussion. This has been a fascinating webinar, everyone. I know I'm a bit biased chairing it, but I just think it's been absolutely brilliant, the way in which we've had different voices from different people invested in using ImmerseMe, trying to get the most out of it. We've had Scott talking us through the website itself and the principles behind ImmerseMe, and that cheesy photo back from 2016, which was great as well. We've heard from Claire and from Rachel talking about their practical classroom experience of using ImmerseMe, and we've heard from Bella around the research behind why VR can help language learning, particularly focusing on ImmerseMe and all those amazing student outcomes. I think it's been a really, really fascinating webinar, and it's been a real pleasure to chair it. So thank you ever so much, all the panelists, for your time and for your experience and for your professionalism. Thank you so much to everyone that's signed up and has come along. For those people watching the recording who weren't able to get up at ridiculous o'clock in the morning to join us live, if you're from the UK, thank you so much for watching the recording. We were blown away by how many people registered almost on the first day that we started promoting this. So it's really, really great. And it shows that there's a real interest and a need to know more about how VR can work. And seeing this this practical webinar will, I'm sure, give you lots of food for thought. And don't forget about that research article there, thesis from Bella that you can really dive into. And Scott has very kindly put the LinkedIn addresses of everyone in the chat as well. So if you want to get in contact with any of the panelists to ask more questions around VR, around the Igloo, around ImmerseMe, then you'd be more than welcome to do so. So without further ado, I'm going to stop the recording now. I'm going to wish you, wherever you are in the world, a very happy end of day, or for those people in the UK, maybe have some breakfast now, or go off and do some teaching and things like that. That's amazing. Thank you so much. I can see it's 3 a.m. in Chile at the moment. So you've all been awesome. It's been a truly international audience, and that again just represents how much interest there is in this topic. So it's been a great one. Take care, everybody. Enjoy your VR experiences in the future and stay in touch. Bye for now, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
See everybody. Bye.